Traveling through the world of One Piece, Ping Xiao awakens his divine journalist system and embarks on his invincible journey of interviewing. The report on the conspiracy of the sand crocodile in Alabastian forced the sand crocodile to come and visit. The incident of the Navy seizing the fruits of the liberation of Alabastian by Luffy was exposed, and Red Dog personally came to arrest someone, but was called back to the Navy headquarters by reporters. Revealing the conspiracy between Dove Langmingge and the Fourth Emperor Kaido, which led to the undead Kaido coming to silence him, but almost realizing his dream of seeking death. He is the thorn in the eye of countless people, but no one can do anything about him, because he holds everyone's secrets and has the power to surpass the four emperors. Sorry, in my opinion, there are no secrets in this world. Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. 1 Gold Medal Journalist System. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The morning sunshine pierced through the sky, and the early autumn climate was cool and pleasant, but at this time Albana had lost its former prosperity. The rebels have captured Cartolia. This news just arrived here 2 days ago, and the entire kingdom of Alabastian was shrouded in the shadow of war. Suddenly, the once bustling capital Albana has been deserted on the streets in recent days. I heard that the rebel forces have become increasingly powerful. I'm afraid they will soon attack the capital. So what should we do? What about the king? Is there nothing the king can do? On the street, 2 passers-by hurriedly passed by, chatting in a low voice. In recent days, the dark clouds of civil war have been looming over the entire kingdom of Alabastian, and people are constantly worried about the imminent outbreak of a decisive battle. The kingdom of Alabastian, located on the great shipping route of St. Quentin Island, was once blessed with good weather and a peaceful and happy life for its people. It is one of the famous great powers. Until one day, it was discovered that the country had not rained for a long time, except for the area where the capital Albana was located. The reason for the drought is that the king used the rain-inducing agent, dancing powder, in the capital. This rumor has emerged within the country. Of course the people don't believe it. How could this be possible? King Cobra is a person who loves the people like a son. How could he do this on his own land? It's just temporary drying up, it will definitely rain. The people are waiting with confidence. But there was no rain for a week, no rain for 2 weeks, and then there was a month, a year, 2 years until the end. The entire kingdom of Alabastian, except for the capital, had not rained for 3 years. Gradually, people began to believe in the previous rumors, although that statement sounded so shocking, but now it seems that there is only one explanation. So, in the face of this situation, some people mourn and pray, some give up their lives and wait for death, and some choose to stand up. A rebellion quickly spread throughout the country, driven by hopelessness for life and anger towards the king. The rebellion gradually became a raging fire. Until now, including the capital Albana, the entire kingdom is shrouded in the shadow of war, and everyone is waiting for war, or in other words, waiting for fate. I still don't believe the king would use rain inducers. The conversation between passers-by continued. Oh, who knows? Anyway, let's prepare for taking refuge outside the city. The other person sighed and spoke. The figures of 2 passers-by gradually drifted away, and no one noticed. In front of a small stall not far away, a man in a black long windbreaker smiled faintly at the passers-by's conversation, then turned around and walked out of the city. It's night, in a sea area near Albana. Under the moonlight, a tall man wearing a black long windbreaker stood on the shore. The man reached out his hand, and a soft orange light gradually gathered in his palm, reflecting the man's delicate face. Received host instructions, confirmed to start the system, and detected the surrounding environment. At this moment, in the man's mind, a mechanical electronic sound came on. Environmental safety, system startup, welcome to the basic operation interface. As the electronic sound ended, the orange light in the man's palm disappeared and was replaced by a virtual electronic screen. Good evening, Mr. Ping Xiao. On the electronic screen, a pretty and cute girl in an orange short skirt smiled and waved to Ping Xiao. Good evening, little orange, activate the light and shadow mode. Ping Xiao smiled faintly and spoke softly. The girl on the screen smiled and lightly flicked her finger. In the flickering orange light, a girl with a sunny smile stood in front of Ping Xiao. The girl's body flickered with fluorescence, but it looked transparent. Her long hair was like a waterfall, hanging all the way to her waist. Her skirt was still orange-red, like the color of the sunset, but it was replaced by a long skirt. How boring. You haven't talked to me for a long time. Before Ping Xiao could speak, the girl pouted in dissatisfaction and complained. There's nothing I can do, I have to be busy making a living to support us. But I promise to chat with Xiao Orange frequently in the future, Ping Xiao smiled and said softly. When speaking, Ping Xiao reached out and placed her hand on the girl's head, as if the girl in front of her was real, touching her hair. Well, Mr. Ping Xiao is really a good person, the girl nodded happily upon hearing Ping Xiao's words, and a happy smile appeared on her pretty face. Ping Xiao looked at Xiao Orange's happy expression, knowing that the girl was just a virtual highly intelligent person, but she still smiled from the bottom of her heart. I have been in this world for over half a month now. If it weren't for this sunny and beautiful girl who often chats with me, Ping Xiao wouldn't have been able to adapt to all these changes and this new world so quickly. Ping Xiao remembered when he was still on that azure planet, called Zhaojia. He is just a poor and destitute journalist, who is threatened because he knows the true face of some people who are ugly. And when I stubbornly reported those things, I was beaten during work one day and ended up sinking into the sea in a burlap bag. When I wake up from my slumber, what appears in front of me is a strange world. Then a cold electronic sound told Ping Xiao that he had arrived in a brand new world, the One Piece world. At that time, Ping Xiao's mind was completely at a loss, until the electronic voice continued to tell him that his current identity was an orphan, and his parents didn't know who he was. There was only one name, Borja Ping Xiao. At this point, Ping Xiao realized later that she had traveled through time and, like the novels she had read before, had developed a system. Gradually waking up from shock, Ping Xiao immediately activated his own system. Then Ping Xiao saw Little Orange. Ping Xiao always thought that the system was the kind of machine without emotions and without the ability to make judgments, but when he saw Xiao Orange, he realized he was wrong. This system called Gold Medal Journalist is completely different from Ping Xiao's understanding. Or in other words, it not only has all the functions of other systems, but also has a high degree of intelligence. She can chat with Ping Xiao, care about his health, and sometimes even play coquettish and complain to him, helping him make the most suitable advice for the situation. Except for not having a real body, this system is no different from a real person. In a short period of time, Ping Xiao fell in love with this highly anthropomorphic system and named her Little Orange, based on the color of her clothes. First task. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Meanwhile, with the introduction of Xiao Orange, Ping Xiao quickly understood the powerful capabilities of the Gold Medal Journalist system. The system will regularly release tasks to allow Ping Xiao to report on certain matters as a journalist. Then the system distributes rewards based on task completion, which come in a variety of ways, from improving physical fitness and superpowers to various items. In the words of Little Orange, as long as you work well, there must be many benefits. However, the system also comes with survival attributes, and each time a task is completed, the system will allocate survival points based on the difficulty of the task. Survival points are specifically used to maintain the operation of the system. If there are not enough survival points, the system will crash and the host will disappear from this world. That is to say, at the moment when Ping Xiao obtained this system, the fate of the entire person was closely related to this system, both prospering and losing. However, this is not a big deal for Ping Xiao, because from this system, he finally sees the hope of becoming a true journalist. As soon as he arrived, he settled in. Soon, Ping Xiao adapted to his new identity and decided to live a good life in the world of the Pirate King as Borja Ping Xiao. What are you thinking again? Why are you ignoring people? Xiaojuzi's dissatisfied complaints brought back Ping Xiao's distant thoughts. Looking at Xiaojuzi glaring angrily at her, Ping Xiao couldn't help but smile slightly. What's wrong? Xiaojuzi, I was just thinking about something, Ping Xiao said with a smile. Xiaojuzi's angry and cute appearance was really likable. Never mind, I'll forgive you this time. Little Orange gave Ping Xiao a helpless glance and said, it's time for rest. Do you want to activate the ship mode? Only then did Ping Xiao realize that while she was lost in thought, time had quietly passed by. Now, on the mid-moon, the sea was silent. Okay, activate the ship mode, Ping Xiao said with a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. As soon as Ping Xiao finished speaking, Little Orange gave a playful smile, extending her delicate hands and holding a delicate model of a sea ship in her palms. As Little Orange raised her hands, in a soft orange glow, the model slowly flew towards the sea and gradually became substantial, constantly growing larger. After a moment, it turned into a real seagoing ship and anchored quietly on the sea surface. This is another function of the system, which comes with a sea vessel called ink boat, which exists as a newspaper. It is usually kept by the system, and when needed, the ink boat can be summoned at any time for rest or work. Host status. Name. Borja Ping Xiao grade. Bronze survival point. 1200 assignable attribute points. 0 physical fitness. 52 strength. 28 speed. 26 skill. None dominance. Unawakened item. None. Ping Xiao lay in bed, staring blankly at her attribute panel. I have been in the world of One Piece for so long, but my abilities are still the same as when I first tested them, without any improvement. And the survival points initially gifted by the system will also be used up. If the task cannot make progress, I'm afraid Ping Xiao will have to say goodbye to this world. Xiao Orange, open the task panel. With a low sigh, Ping Xiao spoke up and ordered. Okay, Mr. Ping Xiao. Xiao Orange was standing below the virtual screen, strolling wearily from one end of the screen to the other, then moving back step by step. Upon hearing Ping Xiao's words, she immediately stood up. That cute appearance, like a child sneaking out to play and then being caught in action. In the dimly lit space, an orange-red light flashed, and another virtual screen appeared in front of Ping Xiao. Task status. Task content. Expose the truth of the Alabastian incident and minimize the losses of the Alabastian kingdom in the civil war. Task deadline. 30 days. Current task completion rate. 1%. Sigh. Looking at her task panel, Ping Xiao let out a deep sigh and reached out to vigorously rub her forehead. He, don't be discouraged. Xiaojuzi originally bit her lip and watched the task panel with Ping Xiao, but when she heard Ping Xiao's sigh, she immediately smiled and comforted. Compared to yesterday's 0, we have made progress. Ping Xiao remained silent, resting her hands behind her head and slowly closing her eyes. Standing on the virtual screen, Little Orange began to take a boring walk again, occasionally looking back at Ping Xiao. Xiao Orange, help me print the first newspaper. After a moment, Ping Xiao suddenly opened his eyes and spoke up. Okay, please turn on editing mode. Upon hearing Ping Xiao's words, Little Orange, who was taking a walk on the screen, immediately stood there playfully, smiling and speaking. After a moment, Ping Xiao looked at the virtual screen that appeared in front of him, pondered for a moment, and slowly began to input the manuscript. Conspiracy. The mysterious figure behind the 3 years of no rain in Alabastian. The next morning, a newspaper that had never been seen before spread throughout the streets of Albania, and the headlines in the newspaper caused a huge uproar. The newspaper only reported one thing, but it shocked everyone who saw it. It has nothing to do with the king if it doesn't rain in Alabastian's country for 3 years. Someone is secretly plotting this matter. The entire Alabastian has been exploited and trapped in a massive conspiracy. A stone stirs up 1,000 waves. After seeing the content in the newspaper, people's first reaction is not to believe it and to question the report. Even some people began to doubt whether this newspaper was written by the king's staff, in order to stabilize the turbulent public opinion. Because before this, people had never seen this newspaper at all, not even the logo of the newspaper publishing it. Although that logo seems pretty good, at least it looks pretty good. A plain white feather pen leaped onto the paper, as if someone was writing with a lively expression. In the spreading ink, a little ink stain blurred into a small boat pattern, with the words "Ink Boat" written in beautiful handwriting next to it. However, this does not make people believe the authenticity of this report. A little-known newspaper, a newspaper I had never seen before, suddenly made such shocking remarks. For the people who have already blamed all the mistakes on the king, it is certainly difficult to accept for a while. A rebellious kingdom. White Dove. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. But when they calmed down, the fog that had been shrouding people's hearts dissipated a bit, and people began to gradually consider the doubts in this matter. Why does the king, who has always loved the people like a son, actually use rain inducers on his own land? This is simply a matter of harm and no benefit. Why do comments about the king always start in the most turbulent areas and when people's hearts are most unstable? When looking back at this report carefully, some wise people gradually thought of these questions and seemed to have a hint of enlightenment in their hearts. That's right. The king is a very wise ruler. He would never do such a thing that would harm the foundation of the country. So someone is targeting the king from behind. Damn it, don't let me catch this kind of guy. For a while, people were discussing and their long-standing doubts about the king and fear of war were slightly dispelled. At this moment, on the deck of the ink boat, Ping Xiaojing quietly lifted her head and watched as a large group of white doves in the sky gradually drifted away. The scene before us is spectacular, with hundreds or even thousands of white doves spreading their pure white wings, flying lightly against the sunrise, slowly rising on the calm sea surface. From a distance, the group of white doves arranged in different patterns, as if playing, but if you observe carefully, you will find that each white dove is slowly soaring along different trajectories. Don't worry, Mr. Ping Xiao. The little white dove will soon send the newspaper to various parts of the country. The light and shadow of Little Orange stood beside Ping Xiao, smiling and speaking. Well, I'm not worried about this, Xiaojuzi is doing things, I can rest assured. Ping Xiao nodded lightly and smiled as she looked at Xiaojuzi standing next to her. The Little Orange, who received praise, seemed a bit shy and lowered her head in embarrassment, her cheeks turning crimson in a humanized way. Ping Xiao didn't speak anymore, just continued to lift his head and watch the white doves dancing gracefully in the clouds, slowly disappearing from sight. The distant white doves in the sky are the postmen of the journalist system, and every newspaper is sent to various places by those white doves. When there are no tasks, the white pigeons will stay in the pigeon cages of the building, fed by the system using food exchanged for survival points. That is to say, the more survival points there are, the more white doves the system can cultivate, and the more places newspapers can be delivered. This is also why the system needs a survival point, not only to maintain operation, but also because many functions of the system require a survival point to be used. A certain sea area within the territory of King Alabastian. A large ship with a crocodile at its bow is moored here quietly, with flags hanging from its mast fluttering in the wind. The winged skull looks majestic, and the two sharp swords intersecting behind the skull add a touch of killing energy. This is the pirate ship of Shah Crocodile, one of the 7 martial seas under the king, renowned worldwide and considered a national hero by the people of the kingdom of Alabastian, known as the Sand Crocodile. Bang! The Sand Crocodile, who was originally lying on a chair, enjoying the sunshine and looking at the newspaper, suddenly threw the newspaper aside and stood up with a gloomy expression. Who posted this report? What kind of person is Majo? After taking a few steps in place, Clodel almost gritted his teeth and muttered to himself. At this moment, the sand crocodile's good mood has been disturbed by this newspaper. My original plan was supposed to be seamless, but now it has been published in the newspaper by someone I've never heard of before. Apart from shock, the sand crocodile is now more angry. As soon as they saw that they could completely drag this country into the quagmire of civil war, the sand crocodile was closer to their goal. But suddenly a guy emerged who seemed to be very familiar with the whole story and even published such a report, posing a threat to his own plan. Is it someone who is watching me? Is there anyone else besides myself who has also seen that thing? The sand crocodile took a few steps on the deck, looking at the sea and lost in thought. Yuba, or now it should be called the Rebel City. This used to be an oasis of the Alabastian kingdom, but now when you look around, there is only endless yellow sand left. Because the disaster here is the most severe, it is also the place where the rebellion began, and the largest scale of rebels are stationed here. On this day, as groups of white doves landed in the camp, newspapers quickly spread among the rebel soldiers. Suddenly, there was some commotion inside the camp, and rebel soldiers gathered together to discuss the authenticity of the newspaper report. Is it true? The king was framed. Isn't the rebellion we launched a mistake? How could it be? We rose up against the king for the future of this country. The rebel soldiers gathered in small groups to discuss, and some even began to waver in their determination to rebel. But more people still insist on not believing the content of this report, believing that their rebellion is only to overthrow the king and establish a better country. The discussions among the rebel soldiers have become increasingly heated, and some have even started arguing over this report. However, soon some rebel cadres put an end to the dispute within the camp and confiscated all the newspapers. Leader, what do you think of this matter? In the council hall, rebel cadre Farafula held a newspaper in his hand and asked Kusha, who was sitting in a chair pondering silently. The other rebel cadres also held a newspaper in their hands, and each person's expression was solemn, looking up at the leader Kusha. Although it makes some sense, it might be the king's words, Kusha said after a few seconds of silence. Before that, we hadn't even heard of the name Majo. The rebel cadres all nodded, as the situation progressed to this point, although it was possible that Mojo's report was true. But these rebels, who have been completely disappointed with the king, still won't easily believe such claims. Don't pay attention to this newspaper, everyone follow the original plan. Kusha closed his eyes, gritted his teeth, threw the newspaper aside, and said, "Fix it here for a few days, let's head towards the capital." "Yes, leader." All the rebel cadres responded in unison, turned around and left one by one, leaving Ko Sha alone, sitting in a chair lost in thought. "Kubula, your tricks cannot deceive me. The future of this country cannot be handed over to you." Kusha murmured softly as she looked at the newspaper that was still on her side. The sun shone on Kusha's face, and Kusha's expression was calm and firm. For exposure of black screen. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At this moment, Ping Xiao was strolling on the streets of Albana. Today's streets are clearly no longer as deserted as they were a few days ago, as people gather together to discuss the content in the newspaper. Did you hear about it? That newspaper called Majo. Of course I heard about it, but now it's spreading throughout the city that this rebellion is simply a conspiracy and has nothing to do with the king. I used to doubt the king, it's really not right. How do you know that what Mojo said must be true? Maybe he's also a scammer. Listening to the discussions of the people on the street, Ping Xiao smiled lightly at the corner of his mouth. That's it, although people are still doubting the authenticity of that report, the seeds of truth have already been planted. Under their own reports, the people of Alabastian have begun to think creatively about the affairs of this country, rather than being completely misled into the wrong direction. As long as people start to think about the doubts behind things in their hearts, then this seed in their hearts will surely take root and sprout quickly. Mr. Ping Xiao, the completion rate of the task has increased. Rewards will be given out. At this moment, the voice of Xiao Orange rang in Ping Xiao's mind. Upon hearing this, Ping Xiao smiled at the corner of his mouth and walked briskly towards the outside of the city. A moment later, in the cabin of the ink boat, Little Orange was introducing the rules of the reward. Every time the completion rate of a task reaches 10%, the system will reward attribute points and survival points, and other rewards will only be obtained after the task is completely completed. Little Orange pointed to the virtual screen in her hand and introduced to Ping Xiao. What is the current completion rate of the task? Ping Xiao nodded and asked. Upon hearing Ping Xiao's question, Xiao Orange didn't answer. She just smiled playfully and reached out to open the task panel. Task status. Task content. Expose the truth of the Alabastian incident and minimize the losses of the Alabastian kingdom in the civil war. Task deadline. 30 days current task completion rate. 28%. Unexpectedly, the first report achieved a task completion rate of 28%, which surprised Ping Xiao a bit. However, upon careful consideration, it is normal to announce that the drought in the kingdom of Alabastian is a conspiracy and will definitely have a huge impact domestically. This can be seen from the reactions of the people of Albania. The system evaluates task completion based on this, and it is understandable to give a 28% rating. This reward earned a total of 280 free attribute points and 2,800 survival points. As it was the first reward, the system also randomly gifted a skill lottery. Before Ping Xiao could recover from her surprise, Little Orange smiled again and said, "Lucky draw." Upon hearing Xiao Orange's words, Ping Xiao asked with some confusion. That's right, the tasks announced by the system are divided into 4 levels from difficult to easy. ABCD in ABCD. If it's an A.level task, each reward will be accompanied by a lucky draw. Little Orange blinked at Ping Xiao and said, "What will you draw?" Ping Xiao nodded clearly and asked again. "It all depends on luck. It's possible to win anything, but it can be roughly divided into 2 categories. Skills and items. You can choose one type of lottery." Little Orange tilted her head and said, "Okay, then I'll choose the skill." Ping Xiao thought for a moment and decided to choose the skill lottery. After all, in the world of the Pirate King, being able to acquire a unique skill is the most important thing. Okay, confirmed. Open the lottery interface and draw skills. Little Orange smiled and nodded, her semi-transparent fingers moving in the void. In a burst of orange light, an ancient copper-colored turntable appeared in space, suspended in front of Ping Xiao, with the hands on the turntable spinning rapidly. Ding! A few seconds later, with a faint sound, the pointer on the turntable stopped rotating and landed on a strange symbol. "I think I've got something good." The turntable disappeared, and Little Orange playfully spoke, holding a virtual scroll in her hand. Upon Xiaojuzi's words, Ping Xiao immediately extended her hand with some anticipation. Smiling for a moment, Little Orange slowly reached out to Ping Xiao with her hand holding the scroll. When the imaginary scroll touched Ping Xiao's skin, it immediately turned into a light and merged into her palm. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining the skill, Juha. Juha. A technique of instantly drawing a sword to kill enemies. At the moment of drawing the sword, there is no room for the enemy to take advantage of it, and a huge sword aura is produced to defeat the enemy. Upon seeing the skill introduction, Ping Xiao nodded slightly, feeling quite satisfied. For Ping Xiao, who has just obtained attribute points and can use them to strengthen his physical fitness, Juha/ is currently the most suitable and powerful skill. Ping Xiao looked at his attribute panel, thought for a moment, and directly used all the attribute points. "Xiao Orange, help me open the attribute panel." After checking the rewards, Ping Xiao smiled faintly and spoke up. "Okay." Little Orange smiled and nodded, waved her hand, and opened Ping Xiao's attribute panel. Host state name. Borja Ping Xiao grade. Bronze survival point. 4,000 assignable attribute points. 0 physical fitness. 152 strength. 108 speed. 126 skill. Juha, a slash that instantly draws a sword to kill enemies, dominance. Unawakened item. None. With the changes in the attribute panel, Ping Xiao can feel that her body has undergone significant changes. Senses such as vision and hearing become more sensitive, and when you calm down, you can even hear the sound of birds flapping their wings in the sky. A warm current flows along her limbs, and Ping Xiao can feel the abundant strength in her body. Ping Xiao clenched his fist, slowly stretched lazily, and a burst of bone joint grinding echoed from his body. He felt an unprecedented sense of comfort, as if every joint on his body had been opened, and his body was filled with strength. Suddenly, Ping Xiao's heart was uplifted, and this power was the guarantee for him to become a journalist. In this world, no one can threaten Ping Xiao, nor can anyone interfere with Ping Xiao's own decisions. Ping Xiao can report on the dark side of this world without any fear of retaliation anymore. Ping Xiao now sees with great clarity that his long-standing goal has finally gained the ability to be achieved. 5. First exposure. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. On the deck of the ink boat, Ping Xiao looked at her attribute panel and felt the abundant power in her body, with a smile on her lips. The system still has updates for side tasks, said Little Orange with a smile as she looked at Ping Xiao, who was satisfied. Side quests. Upon hearing Xiao Orange's words, Ping Xiao was slightly stunned and looked at the task panel in confusion. If the conditions are met, the branch task will be triggered. Task condition. Reporter task, have crocodile voluntarily come to the door for an interview. Task deadline. 30 days task rating. A success reward. Unknown failure penalty. Deduct half of the host's existing survival points. Looking at the updated side quests, Ping Xiao fell silent for a while and spoke angrily, what is this side quest? This is clearly a domineering clause, isn't it? Who knows how difficult it is to earn some survival points? Now, if a side quest fails, half of it will be deducted. And I don't even know what the reward is. Ping Xiaodun had a feeling of wanting to cry without tears, but he could only accept it. The punishment of deducting survival points was too cruel for Ping Xiaodun. It seems that I am exhausted. I need to continue working hard to support us. Ping Xiao looked at Xiao Orange helplessly and said. After speaking, Ping Xiao reached out her hand and pretended to be looking at her with a smile on her face. Little Orange bounced her head. Xiao Orange cooperated and covered her head, making a painful expression. She pouted discontentedly, but her eyes were filled with a smile. Looking at Xiao Orange's cute and playful appearance, Ping Xiao couldn't help but chuckle lightly. At this time, on a certain route to the kingdom of Alabastian, a triangular masted ship decorated with sheep at the bow is sailing rapidly on the sea. In front of the deck stands a girl with water blue long hair and waist length, carefully reading a newspaper. Someone has planned a conspiracy against the entire kingdom. The 3-year drought in the kingdom marked the beginning of this conspiracy and had nothing to do with the king. Looking at the words and phrases in the newspaper, the girl's eyes suddenly became moist, and tears streamed down, wetting the newspaper in her hand. Miss Vivi, try my new dish. At this moment, a man in a black suit, holding a fragrant dish in his hand, walked slowly to the girl's side with a flattering smile. Who did it? It made Miss Vivi cry. Damn it, I won't let him go. The next second, seeing the crying girl, the man immediately became furious and roared at the other people standing on the deck. Luffy. Are you a bastard? Or are you a green algae head? The man should have really been angry. His graceful appearance just now completely disappeared, and his face was gloomy and terrifying. Hello. I'm talking about you, this guy. Let's figure out the situation before we speak. We're far from Vivi. The man, known as the Green Algae Head, was originally yawning in boredom. Upon hearing this, he immediately spoke with a displeased expression. "So it's you, you're the one who deserves to be beaten." The man in the suit walked towards the green algae head with a dark face. "Bastard! Which ear did you hear me?" The green algae-headed man also said with a black face, staring fiercely at the person walking towards him. On the deck, the two of them were fighting each other, as if they were about to have a big fight in the next moment. "Sauron! Sanji! Both of you get out of here!" At this moment, a rude voice came from behind the two of them. Bang! Bang! A tall girl with orange hair roughly punched each of them in the head before walking towards the girl known as Vivi. "Damn it!" The green algae-headed man covered his head and looked fiercely at the girl's back, but was helpless. "Ah! Miss Nami, who hit people, is so charming." The man in the suit spoke with a drunken expression on his face, as his previous anger had long been lost. "That's right, this ship is the pirate ship of the Straw Hat Pirates, the Golden Mary. And the people on the ship were the Straw Hat Group and the Princess of the Alabastian Kingdom, Vivi." At this moment, without paying attention to Sauron and Sanji, Nami walked up to Vivi and looked at her anxiously, comforting her. "What's wrong with you? Vivi, did you think of something sad? Are you feeling unwell? Let me prescribe some medicine for you," Joba asked, looking at Vivi with the same concern. "It's because of this newspaper." "What's written on it?" Luffy stretched out his arm and took the newspaper from Vivi's hand, speaking in confusion as he read it. "Let me see. Let me see." The long-nosed Usopp immediately leaned his head over and looked at the newspaper together. A moment later, Straw Hat and Vivi sat on the deck for a meeting. "So, someone in Wong's country already knows the truth about this matter." Nami continued to look at the newspaper in her hand and spoke. It must be like this. The conspiracy of the Baroque Work Society is now known to the people of the whole country." Vivi nodded forcefully and spoke with a smile. "Ah, doesn't that mean civil war could have been avoided?" Joba said excitedly. "That's great. Vivi, you can finally rest assured." The corners of Luffy and others' mouths also smiled, which was a heartfelt happiness for Vivi. "Don't be too happy too early." At this moment, Sauron suddenly spoke lightly. Suddenly, everyone on the deck turned their gaze to Sauron, their eyes filled with doubt. "What kind of discouraging words do you want to say at such a time, you guy?" Sanji said discontentedly. "This newspaper didn't say who or what organization was behind this conspiracy." Without addressing Sanji's tone, Sauron wrapped his hands around his chest and spoke calmly. "And?" Sauron looked at the marker on the newspaper and continued, "Majo newspaper, have you heard of it? Even if such an unknown newspaper reports this news, can it really affect the decision of the rebels?" Sauron closed his eyes and said slowly, "So we can't be too optimistic now." Upon hearing Sauron's words, everyone on the deck fell silent. Even Sanji, who had previously looked angry, fell silent and lit a cigarette, lost in thought. For a moment, the deck fell into silence. "Anyway, I am very grateful to the person who published this report. Even if the final war cannot be avoided, I want to thank him personally." After a long time, Vivi picked up the newspaper on the table and whispered. Don't worry, now we know we're not fighting alone." Luffy suddenly stood up and spoke slowly and forcefully, "We'll work even harder to stop this conspiracy." The people on the deck all looked up at Luffy and nodded with firm eyes. Vivi looked at the resolute expressions of the crowd, then lowered her head to look at the newspaper in her hand, her eyes moist again. 6 Red Snow left text. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Sir, take your time. Welcome to Visit Again. Albana, at the entrance of a weapons store, the shopkeeper kindly escorted Ping Xiao to the door with a flattering smile on his face. How can one not be diligent? Ping Xiao bought the most expensive knife in his store, a famous knife worth 3 million belly. Nowadays in Albania, there are not many generous guests like Ping Xiao. Maybe when the rebels will attack the city, who wouldn't want to leave more money for emergencies? People like Ping Xiao who came to buy knives carrying a pile of gold have not seen the weapon store owner for a long time. However, the shop owner who treats Ping Xiao as the god of wealth does not know that gold is not worth mentioning to Ping Xiao. After the increase of survival points, the new feature, Gold Vault of Ink Boat, is opened, and the gold inside is directly calculated by tons. As long as you pay a certain survival point, you can take as much as you want to use. So Ping Xiaohua didn't feel any pain at all, so she just bought the best knife from the weapons store, the Red Snow Left text. Red Snow Left script, belonging to one of the 50 skilled swords of Liang Kuai, is a short sword with a body flowing with the light of flying snow, a gentle arc, and gorgeous decoration. After leaving the weapons store, Ping Xiao held the knife in his hand and felt the cold touch in his palm. He smiled lightly at the corner of his mouth and walked slowly towards the corner of the street ahead. After a moment, Ping Xiao's figure appeared in a sealed alley. What? Are you finally planning to take action? Ping Xiao slowly stopped and smiled faintly before speaking. As she spoke, Ping Xiao turned to look at the entrance of the alley. The sunlight slanted onto the street, and 3 burly figures holding knives stood at the entrance. Ha ha ha. It seems that you can't wait to die. One of the leaders smiled ferociously and said, "This person is very tall, a head taller than Ping Xiao." As the leader's words fell, the 3 big men walked into the alley, each with a cruel smile on their lips. "Kid. Have you read the newspaper, haven't you?" The 3 of them spoke arrogantly without paying any attention to Ping Xiao. "Recently, the boss asked us to find that guy named Majo. We suspect that you are the person who wrote that report. In order to clear your suspicion, do we have to make some gesture?" Finally, the 3 big men looked at the knife in Ping Xiao's hand with a ferocious smile on their lips. At this moment, the eyes of the 3 big men all showed greedy gazes, staring at Ping Xiao as if seeing a golden mountain. It seems that these 3 people do not know that they are journalists with the code name Majo, only thinking about their own money. Ping Xiao's gaze flickered, and a disdainful smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. "Kid. Hand over that knife and all the money on your body obediently. Perhaps I can consider letting you go." The person in charge looked at Ping Xiao with a fierce look in their eyes and spoke. "Such a good knife, it's not for a delicate and tender child like you to play with. What if you cut your hand?" The strong man on the right said as he raised his knife and walked towards Ping Xiao. Ha ha ha. The other 2 also grinned and raised their knives, sealing off all possible escape routes for Ping Xiao. Looking at the 3 people walking towards him, Ping Xiao still stood still, with a faint smile on his lips. Slowly reaching out to grasp the handle of the knife, Ping Xiao's eyes gradually became cold. "Kid. Go to hell." As he spoke, the knife in the leader's hand had already been chopped down. Just as I saw Ping Xiao's gaze, the big man's heart suddenly felt a very cold feeling, as if Ping Xiao was looking at a dead person. The strong discomfort made the big man wave his knife directly, while the other 2 also raised their knives and chopped them down. Faced with the knife that fell towards him, Ping Xiao's mouth still had a hint of smile, but the Red Snow Left text in his hand instantly unsheathed. "Juha." With a cold shout, Ping Xiao's figure passed by the 3 big men like a ghost. Shoo! The knife light flickered, and there seemed to be the sound of flying snow passing through the air. The bright light seemed to illuminate Ping Xiao's eyes in this moment. That is the most dazzling and unparalleled light in the world that the 3 people across have never seen before. The hearts of the 3 were destroyed in an instant, and all their greed quickly dissipated like cold snow under the scorching sun. The great fear occupied the hearts of the 3, and then they heard the sound of blood flowing through their bodies clearly. The 3 of them looked at each other with a bewildered expression, as if they had not been attacked. Big brother, the big man standing on the left awkwardly shouted, but before he could finish speaking, he could no longer make a sound. A red line slowly spread from the big man's neck, and in the next moment, blood spurted out. The big man standing on the left gradually felt that his strength had completely dissipated. Finally, looking at his companion in confusion, the eyes of the big man on the left gradually closed. The big man standing on the right also slowly collapsed at this moment. Bang! Bang! It wasn't until he heard the sound of two companions standing beside him falling to the ground that the leading man gradually realized it. Bang! The knife in his hand unconsciously fell to the ground, and the big man trembled as he raised his hand and cautiously touched his neck. Blood stains. The big man looked at the bloodstains on his fingers, and at the same time, he smelled the fishy smell of blood. His eyes were almost protruding, and beads of sweat as big as beans kept slipping off his forehead. You! The big man turned around and looked at Ping Xiao with a look of fear in his eyes. Although he opened his mouth wide, he was too nervous to speak. Ping Xiao slowly turned around, the knife in his hand had already retracted its scabbard, with a cold smile on his lips and a calm gaze at the big man. Unfortunately, you found the right person. I'm the journalist with the code name Majo. In Han's terrifying eyes, Ping Xiao spoke calmly, but I don't plan to go back with you. Ho 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 ho, the big man covered his neck with one hand and pointed to Ping Xiao with the other. He made a strange sound in his mouth, but couldn't speak. Don't be afraid. I don't have any plans to kill you yet. But... Ping Xiao smiled faintly as he looked at the scared look on the big man's face, and said, remember to tell your president that I want to do an interview with him. Ping Xiao turned around and walked towards the outside of the alley, and a cold voice reached the ears of the big man. Within 10 days, he will come to find me. Or. Speaking of this, Ping Xiao's footsteps paused for a moment and continued, I will uncover his true face layer by layer and then personally find him. Ping Xiao slowly left, leaving only two corpses slowly becoming stiff and cold in the alley, as well as a person who was almost scared to the point of losing his voice. 7. Re-exposure. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Bang! Listening to the intermittent reports from the phone worm, the sand crocodile slapped the table and stood up on the ground. Let me go find him. I hope he can live until then. The sand crocodile took a hard puff of his cigar and tried to calm his anger. Continue with our plan, don't mess around with this guy's appearance, I will arrange everything else. After a moment, the sand crocodile picked up the phone worm and gave a faint command. Yes, President. A relieved voice came from the phone worm, as if they had finally recovered from their nervousness. The sand crocodile didn't say anything more and hung up the phone worm. Slowly walking to the edge of the deck, the sand crocodile was holding a cigar at the corner of its mouth, looking calmly at the sea with a pensive expression. On the other side of the phone worm, a man slowly wiped the sweat off his forehead. Pop! With a sudden slap, he struck the big man standing behind him, trembling as he looked at his face. Waste! The president's ideal village battle plan almost had an accident because of you, you bastard. The man sneered and didn't look at the big man anymore, then walked away in big strides. The beaten man lowered his head in fear, not daring to move, and the bandage on his neck oozed blood. The capital of the kingdom of Alabastian, Albania. It has been several days since the last newspaper incident. Everything has not changed much, and the news of the rebels leaving their headquarters has already spread to the city. The fear of war is weighing on people's hearts, and the content of that newspaper can no longer make people quiet. In the early morning of that day, just as the sun had set on the streets of the city, a large number of people rushed towards the city gate, intending to seek refuge outside the city. However, due to fear of allowing rebel spies to infiltrate, the guards refused to open the city gate and drove the crowd away. Why don't we leave the city? That's right, get out of the way. We don't want to wait for the rebels to come here. But the guard's drive did not achieve the expected effect, but instead ignited the anger of the people, who argued loudly, and the situation gradually became out of control. Gugu. At this moment, a large group of white doves suddenly flew over the city, their pure white wings spreading and fainting in the sunlight, emitting a soft glow. The quarrels in the city gradually stopped, and the noisy streets quieted down at this moment. People looked up in a daze, watching groups of white doves passing over the city. "Dad, look, what a lovely pigeon." A little girl in the crowd held her father's hand and said happily. On such a morning, a large group of white doves danced gracefully in the warm sunshine, creating a serene and beautiful scene. At this moment, it seems that people have forgotten the war haze that has been shrouding the city all along, and everyone is quietly enjoying this scene. That's. Suddenly, someone pointed at the white dove in the sky and shouted in surprise. "It's the previous newspaper." "That newspaper was sent by these white doves," another person continued to shout, with a hint of smile in their voice. "It's Mo Zhou's newspaper." More people began to shout, looking up at these white doves with hopeful eyes, as if everyone was looking forward to something. Gugu. As if responding to people's cries, the white doves in the sky began to sing softly, and the flock of pigeons circled like rising white clouds, slowly scattering in the sky. Suddenly, countless white papers fell like snowflakes towards the crowd on the ground. Albana, the palace. King Cobra hasn't been able to rest well for a long time. Since the drought in the country, Cobra's health has been deteriorating. Especially after the news of the rebellion broke out, the once cheerful king often couldn't sleep at night and couldn't sleep all night. This morning, Kubula stood on the tallest building of the palace as usual, gazing at the city and the direction of the city gate. When the commotion among the people began, Kubula had someone call for the deputy of the palace guard, Bell. "Your Majesty." Bell respectfully bowed to the king after arriving. "Let the soldiers open the city gate," Kubula said with a faint smile as he looked in the direction of the gate. "Your Majesty, in that case, there will be rebel spies mixing in and out of the crowd." Bell remained silent for a few seconds before speaking. "What's the matter? If my people can be safe, then my country is also safe." Cobra smiled kindly and said. After speaking, Kubula continued to look in the direction of the city gate and murmured softly, "Vivi, you should be back soon." Bell suddenly felt a sharp pain in his eyes. He didn't speak anymore, just lowered his head deeply. Bell didn't understand why some people would still believe the rumors outside, even though the king loved his people as deeply as he loved his own child. The king of a great country, the wisest monarch, is now so exhausted that it is no different from an old man who talks about his daughter. If he could personally see the leader of the rebel army, Bell would really like to ask him a question. "Are you satisfied? This country, along with its king, is now so old that it seems like it's about to die. Has your goal been achieved?" After a pause, Bell slowly stood up and bowed again, intending to convey the king's order. But just then, Bell heard the sound of wings flapping. Looking up, Bell saw a white dove spreading its wings and slowly flying towards the direction of the palace. After being stunned for a few seconds, Bell stopped walking away. Baroque Work Society. A mysterious organization hidden behind the scenes. Quickly, new news spread throughout Albana, once again causing a huge uproar among the public. What led the civil war in the kingdom of Alabastian was actually an organization called the Baroque Work Society. The newspaper's content suggests that the president of the Baroque Working Society, a mastermind who has always been behind the scenes, was the mastermind behind this conspiracy due to his ambition. Firstly, the use of prohibited items and rain-inducing agents caused a large-scale drought within the kingdom of Alabastian. Then, all of this was blamed on the king, and finally, the anger of the people was used to incite rebellion. Everything that happened in Alabastian was instigated by an organization called Baroque Studios, for some unspeakable secrets. Suddenly, people who saw this newspaper stirred up huge waves in their hearts. Combining the content of two newspapers and considering the previous doubts, many people began to believe that there must be some unknown insider information about the rebellion. The king is wronged. In the hearts of the people, they had completely believed this, and the unrest in Albania immediately subsided. More and more voices supporting the king began to ring throughout the country. 8 Rebel Army. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Task status. Task content. Expose the truth of the Alabastian incident and minimize the losses of the Alabastian kingdom in the civil war. Task deadline. 30 days current task completion rate. 50%, just as the news published in the second newspaper quickly spread throughout the country. Ping Xiaojing lay leisurely on the deck, looking at the task panel that had already reached half completion, while receiving a second reward from the system. In addition to free attribute points and survival points, this time Ping Xiao won a set of combined skills in the skill lottery again, which is the famous body skill in the world of pirates. 6 styles. 6 moves. Shaving, iron block, paper painting, moon step, lanjiao, finger spear. These 6 moves are collectively referred to as the ultimate physical skill that surpasses human physical limits. They are extremely powerful and practical. After reading the skill introduction, Ping Xiao reached out with satisfaction and took the scroll from Xiao Orange's hand. Just like last time, while the scroll disappeared from Ping Xiao's palm, Ping Xiao had already proficiently grasped the 6 moves. Host state name. Borja Ping Xiao grade. Bronze survival point. 5,300 assignable attribute points. 0 physical fitness. 232 strength. 178 speed. 196 skills. Juha and 6 styles dominance. Unawakened item. Red Snow left text, gripping his fist and feeling the powerful force inside his body. Ping Xiao smiled faintly and closed the attribute panel. With Ping Xiao's current strength, even if facing Clodal head-on, he is not afraid at all and has the absolute ability to fight. Now, we can start the next step of planning. His gaze fell on the distant sea, and Ping Xiao touched his chin thoughtfully. The headquarters of the rebel army. Due to the worsening drought in Juba and the lack of sufficient water sources, a few days ago, rebel leader Kusha decided to lead everyone to relocate and station in Kaitlia, which has relatively abundant water sources. With the arrival of the second newspaper, the already stable hearts became restless again. More and more rebel soldiers feel that they have wronged the king and are trapped in deep self-blame, with rebel soldiers leaving almost every day. And Kusha, who had originally decided to repair here for a few days and set off for the capital, surprisingly fell silent these days. The order to depart has not been issued for a long time, and various rumors have begun to emerge in the camp, causing even more confusion among the rebel soldiers. Until that day, hundreds of people rushed to the door of Kusha's room. What do you want to do? Ferrara, who had been guarding the entrance of Kusha, stopped these people and asked in a deep voice. We want to see the leader. We have questions to ask him. A rebel soldier led by him, although very scared, mustered the courage to speak up. No way. The leader said that if he doesn't come out, no one can go in. Farafura looked at the soldier and said expressionlessly. Looking at the tall and burly Ferrara, some rebel soldiers immediately retreated in fear. We suspect that the leader has ulterior motives in this uprising. We must see the leader. But more people were unwilling to leave and shouted loudly, pulling their necks. What are you saying? Ferrara stared at these soldiers, his eyes flashing with anger. Yes. It was the leader who led us in the uprising. But now. The soldier led by him shrank his body, but still stuttered and said, we suspect the leader has ulterior motives. He is from the Baroque studio. Bastard. How could he say such a thing? Ferrara angrily raised his fist and was about to hit the soldier in front of him. The soldier had no intention of fighting back, although his forehead was covered in cold sweat, he still stood in place, waiting for Ferrara to come down. Stop it. At this moment, a peaceful voice came from the room behind Ferrara, accompanied by footsteps. The door creaked open, and Kusha slowly walked to the front of the crowd and stood. Leader. Suddenly, the soldiers around them all respectfully shouted, and the previously passionate momentum of the crowd suddenly stopped. Leader, this guy dares. Ferrafura angrily lowered his fist, his gaze still fiercely fixed on the soldier in front of him. Kusha waved his hand, gesturing for Ferrara not to get too excited, and then looked at the many soldiers in front of him, his eyes calm, not knowing what he was thinking. At this moment, more and more soldiers have gathered towards this place, and people are anxiously watching Kusha, not knowing how Kusha will handle this matter. Do you suspect that I led the uprising because I wanted to be the king? Kusha looked at the soldiers in front of him for a long time and asked calmly. The newspaper said that the drought that occurred domestically was a conspiracy. The rebellion was planned by an organization called the Baroque Work Society, said a rebel soldier with his head lowered in a low voice. That's right, that's exactly what the newspaper said, and it also revealed many doubts. Kusha nodded and spoke slowly. But when he said this, Kusha looked around and said word by word, what did you rebel for? The rebel soldiers stopped talking, everyone silently lowered their heads, and the air was quiet. Did you rise up because you wanted to follow me? Or did any of you rise up because of my instigation? Kusha continued. Still no one spoke, and all the rebel soldiers fell silent at this moment. The previous public anger dissipated in Kusha's brief questioning. You're not rebelling for me. You're rebelling for this country, to save this tired country from the king's hands. Kusha said as he slowly walked towards the crowd. The number of soldiers gathered at the scene now was countless, but no one dared to look at Kusha. Wherever Kusha walked, everyone automatically gave way. No matter what the truth is, it can only be known after reaching Albana. Kusha stood in the center of the crowd and continued speaking. We are all gathered here for a common goal, we want to save this country. When Kusha said this, she closed her eyes and her father's aged face came to mind. Kusha's father, Doto, still insists on believing in the king's innocence, constantly digging the ground in Yuba day and night in search of water sources. Kusha gritted her teeth hard, suppressing the sudden surge of complex emotions in her heart, and spoke firmly, now, I'm going to Albana. If you don't want to believe me, you can leave now. But. Kusha rode his warhorse and looked at the dark crowd around him, saying loudly, even if I'm the only one left, I'll go to Albana. After speaking, Kusha rode his horse towards the outside of the camp. Farafula pulled a horse and silently followed Kusha, becoming the first person to follow him. Rebel cadre Kabi became the second and left behind Kusha. Soon, there will be a third, a fourth finally, the entire campsite became boiling, and people stepped onto their horses and left behind Kusha. We need to save this country. You must know the truth no matter what. Rebel soldiers were all drinking loudly, and a flood of troops gathered behind Kusha, rushing towards Albana. 9 Mr. 1, Baroque Studio. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Rainy Land, an important city in the kingdom of Alabastian. The largest casino in the kingdom, Rain Banquet, is located here, and it is also the stronghold of Sand Crocodile and Crocodile. At this moment, in a rather luxurious room, the Sand Crocodile held a wine glass in its hand, with a smile on its lips, and comfortably picked up a newspaper from the table. Bang! At the next moment, the Sand Crocodile directly smashed the wine glass in its hand onto the ground, and its originally calm expression had become distorted due to anger. Who the hell is it? Do you really know everything? The Sand Crocodile stared at the newspaper in its hand and spoke in a low voice. No matter who you are. If you threaten my plan, you must die. With a cold smile, the Sand Crocodile slowly took out a phone worm from its clothes. President. After the phone was dialed, a woman's plain voice came quickly. All plans need to be accelerated. We don't have much time left. The sand crocodile continued to scrutinize the newspaper in front of him, speaking in a low voice. Yes, the other side of the phone worm fell silent for a few seconds before calmly responding. Also, Mr. 1 and Mr. 2 have already arrived in Albana. Let them do something, said the sand crocodile in a calm voice, with a hint of smile on his lips once again. At this moment, Ping Xiao was standing not far from the city of Albana, looking at the gradually raised city walls. Hurry up, push the defensive cannons over. Prepare more ammunition. Slightly, Ping Xiao could still hear the cheers of some officers from the city wall. It seems that everything has not yet derailed, and the sand crocodile has successfully provoked the largest-scale war. Ping Xiao looked at Albana, who was highly guarded under the sunset, and silently thought to herself. Shoo! At this moment, a violent sound that cut through the air came from behind Ping Xiao. Can't you hold on any more? Feeling the killing intent coming from behind, Ping Xiao smiled faintly at the corner of her mouth. His eyes suddenly turned cold, and Ping Xiao kicked his right leg on the ground. 6-style moon steps. At the moment when Ping Xiao's toes touched the ground, a cloud of white smoke formed under her feet. As soon as her body jumped up, her speed broke through the sound barrier. Bang! Almost at the moment when Ping Xiao left, a powerful slash landed on the spot where he was standing before him. This is a bald man dressed in the style of a Shaolin monk, tall and muscular, with snake patterns on both sides of his chest. Baroque Work Society Senior Agent, capable of chopping fruits, Mr. 1, Das Bonus. Are you the ink boat? After a single blow, Mr. 1 didn't continue to attack, but looked at Ping Xiao expressionlessly and asked. What? Did the sand crocodile send you over? Ping Xiao looked at Mr. 1 calmly and said. No, I have more important tasks. Mr. 1 shook his head stiffly and said, it's just a matter of getting rid of you. Really? Upon hearing this, Ping Xiao's lips lit up with a faint smile and he spoke, it seems that Feng Qilai has already entered Albana. Upon hearing something pointed out by Ping Xiao, Mr. 1's eyes suddenly turned cold. It seems that you do know a lot. Mr. 1 said coldly, his arms turning into blades and slashing towards Ping Xiao in a cross shape. Slash the fruit, chop it apart. The slash, sharp enough to cut through the air, charged straight towards Ping Xiao. As a fruit slayer, Mr. 1 can turn any part of his body into a blade and also make his skin as hard as steel. However, facing Mr. 1's attack on him, Ping Xiao remained calm and composed. With a faint smile, Ping Xiao's body leaped up and instantly became lighter than a feather. 6 styles of paper drawing. Ping Xiao's body leaped into mid-air and easily dodged Mr. 1's strike. However, this was just the beginning. In the next moment, Ping Xiao kicked out with his foot, carrying the momentum of breaking the wind and attacking Mr. 1. 6-style lawn feet. Ping Xiao's full strength gathered on his feet, and a curved slashing momentum, like a straight line, kicked fiercely towards Mr. 1. Bang! With a loud bang, even Mr. 1, whose body was as hard as steel under the fruit's ability, could not withstand such an attack and was directly hit by a foot, hitting the ground. At the same time, in the waters near the kingdom of Alabastian, the Golden Mary is still sailing rapidly. Sure enough, this person must know the truth. Vivi firmly held the second newspaper in her hand and said confidently. In this way, Vivi's country has a greater chance of being saved. Joba said happily from the sidelines. So, all we need to do is find what Vivi said, the president of this Baroque working society. Crocodile, and knock him down. Luffy spoke confidently. It's not that simple. Suddenly, Sauron spoke up. That's one of the 7 martial seas under the king, on par with Eagle Eyes. Sauron said calmly. Eagle-eyed Mihawk, every time he mentions this name, Sauron can feel that the scar on his chest is still tingling faintly. That King Xiao, who stands at the top of all the pirates and overlooks the entire sea, is not so easy to deal with. And not only that. At this point, Nami also spoke up, if Crocodile is Mr. Zero, then all members of the Baroque Work Society. They will also rush to Alabastian. Vivi continued, finishing what Nami wanted to say. Suddenly, Joba and Usopp, who were already very excited, fell silent. The Baroque Working Society, with a population of 2,000 people, is definitely not as easy to deal with as imagined. Anyway, as long as we knock down Crocodile, that's all. Only Luffy continued nonchalantly. At this point, the contours of the land could gradually be seen in the distance. Outside the city of Albana. Ping Zhao's figure once again moved horizontally from the air, evading Mr. One's strike. At this moment, Mr. One gritted his teeth tightly and his expression was no longer so calm. It has been almost half an hour since we fought against Ping Zhao, and even now, Mr. One has not attacked Ping Zhao even once. On the contrary, I suffered a considerable injury. Who the hell are you? Why are you obstructing our plan? Mr. One looked at Ping Zhao with a tense face and asked. It's not important. Ping Zhao smiled lightly and said in a casual voice, you just need to know that I'm a journalist. As soon as the words fell, Ping Zhao's figure disappeared from the spot again. The next moment, Ping Zhao's figure appeared in mid-air. The red snow-left text worn on the waist instantly peeled off its sheath and was slashed down with a sharp slash that cut through space. Juha. The slash, as if it were a lion in the mortal world, suddenly landed on Mr. One's body. Dang! As if cutting through steel, when Ping Zhao's slash fell, the sound of gold and iron clashing could be heard. Ping Zhao's figure slowly fell behind Mr. One, crouching slightly. The knife in his hand had already retracted its scabbard. Mr. One's body suddenly froze in place, looking down in disbelief at the slowly thickening red line on his chest. Bang! At the next moment, Mr. One's tall body fell to the ground with a loud crash. Tell Crocodile that I'm waiting for him to come and find me personally, Ping Zhao glanced at Mr. One and said calmly before turning around and leaving. Mr. One struggled to move his arm, stuffed a healing pill into his mouth, and his veins bulging on his forehead. He forced himself to take a look at the direction of Ping Zhao's departure and slowly closed his eyes. 10 exposures. The people behind the scenes. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A moment later, on the deck of the ink boat. Ping Xiaojing stood in front of an electronic screen, holding a feather pen in his hand, writing something. Xiao Orange's light and shadow stood behind Ping Xiao, her semi-transparent fingers gracefully moving in the air. A group of white doves hovered in the sky, arranged in various patterns following Xiao Orange's gestures. The president behind the Baroque Work Society. Is it a national hero or something else? A few minutes later, Ping Xiao looked at the slowly emerging handwriting on the electronic screen and smiled faintly at the corners of his mouth. If this newspaper were to be published, perhaps some people would really be unable to sit still, right? Xiao Orange, start printing immediately and distribute this newspaper as well. Ping Xiao put her hands around her chest and smiled as she spoke. Okay, please wait a moment, Little Orange smiled and gently raised her hand. As the orange light in Little Orange's palm converged, a large stack of printed newspapers suddenly appeared on the deck in front of him. Goo-goo. A group of white doves arranged in a winding pattern in the sky slowly landed on the deck. Each white dove picked up a newspaper and spread its wings away. Crocodile, a hero in the eyes of the people of Alabastian, is one of the 7 Marshalsees under the king and the president of the Baroque Work Society. Half a day later, as Majo's third newspaper was distributed, this news quickly swept through the entire kingdom of Alabastian like a passing storm. For a moment, from the nobles and nobles to the common people, everyone fell into great shock. How could this be possible? That's Crocodile. Defeated the pirates who invaded the town multiple times and protected the heroes of the people. How could he be the mastermind behind everything? Suddenly, a great fear rose in people's hearts, and some fell into endless entanglement. The first feeling tells people that they can't believe this. But rational judgment has once again made people's hearts become confused. Albana, the palace. At the first moment King Cobra saw the newspaper, he summoned the 2 captains of the Alabastian Kingdom's guards, Wolverine Gaka and Eagle Falcon Bell. No one knows about the content of the 3-person conversation. But after the conversation, King Cobra immediately decided to send his entire army to the rainy land the next day to fight against Crocodile. Meanwhile, on the way to Albana, the rebels also saw the newspaper. Leader, should we stop moving forward? Farafora looked at Kusha without saying a word and asked. No, we can't stop. We have to rush to Albana to know if the content in the newspaper is true or false. Kusha gritted his teeth firmly and said. With a wave of his hand, Ko Sha's newspaper flew away, and Ko Sha looked firmly ahead. Ferrara didn't say anything more and threw away the newspaper in his hand, moving forward at full speed. Behind the 2, many rebel soldiers raised their hands and threw away their newspapers when they saw the situation. After the last incident, the rebels who have decided to go to Albana are still hesitant in their hearts. Although the content in the newspaper shocked these rebel soldiers as well. But the country has reached this point, and they are the last struggling force in this country. How could anyone be willing to step back? At this moment, all the rebel soldiers gritted their teeth and only identified one target, Albana. Rainy Land, the headquarters of Crocodile. When the message arrived here, the sand crocodile had just resolved another troublesome matter. Looking at the group of straw hats locked in the stone cage of the sea tower, the sand crocodile smiled faintly at the corners of its mouth. Do you really think your efforts can save this country? It's so naive. The sand crocodile spoke with a hint of mockery in its voice. Bastard. Luffy and others all looked at the sand crocodile angrily, but they couldn't do anything when they were locked up. Vivi was not trapped, she was kneeling weakly on the other side, her head vertical, crying softly. Gollum Gollum. At this moment, the phone worm placed on the table rang. Standing behind the sand crocodile, a woman in a white coat slowly walked up to the table and answered the phone. No. It's not good. Our plan has been exposed. Just as the phone was answered, an anxious voice immediately roared out. What? The woman in white seemed to be slightly stunned and turned to look at the sand crocodile. At this moment, the smile on the corner of the sand crocodile's mouth had stiffened, and the corners of its eyes twitched slightly. That guy named Mo Zhou has published his 3rd report, the president's name, and our plan have all been exposed. The person on the other side of the phone worm continued to shout loudly. What? This time, hearing the sound inside the phone worm, everyone in the hall was shocked. However, after being shocked, the sand crocodile felt more frustrated and frustrated, while Luffy and others felt happy. Your conspiracy will never succeed. Nami shouted as she looked at the sand crocodile. Unlike the people of the kingdom, the Straw Hat group had already learned the truth from Vivi's mouth, but had been unable to inform the people in the country. Now, the truth of the matter has been reported by that guy named Mo Zhou, and there is nothing more satisfying than this. Vivi's originally lowered head had already been lifted, and a happy smile also appeared at the corner of her mouth. Do you think this can stop everything from happening? At this moment, the sand crocodile smiled coldly again. It's too late. This country will definitely be destroyed by war. You can't stop anything, even you yourself are going to die. After saying these words calmly, the sand crocodile turned around and walked towards the door. As soon as the sand crocodile finished speaking, the floor suddenly opened and a huge golden crocodile jumped out from under the floor. Banana crocodile. This time, Luffy and others stayed in place. Banana crocodile, a large crocodile that specializes in hunting sea kings for food. For the Straw Hat group trapped in the stone cage of the sea tower, with only Vivi left to move freely, seeing this guy is not a good thing. The sand crocodile gave Vivi an indifferent glance and left directly. The woman in white glanced at Luffy and others, followed behind the sand crocodile, and slowly walked out of the room.